Hello guys, this is Riyadeshwar. You're back on my channel Crux of English, and today we are going to continue the modern age that we were already studying, and the writer that we are going to talk about today is Virginia Woolf. I think this is a name that every literature student has heard a lot. She's not just related to modernism, she's also a very big writer in the theory of feminism. And if you are concerned about that, I have made a video on feminism, and go watch that, and I have discussed the criticism and the theories that Virginia Woolf has given. That is entirely a different perspective, but today we are going to talk about her in perspective of modern age. So Virginia Woolf was born in 1882 and she died in 1941. She committed suicide by walking into the water. Now, I know I said that I had discussed the theories, and I have, but a very important part of it that you have to remember is about Shakespeare's sister that she has written. And there's a sister of Shakespeare, according to Virginia Woolf, there's a sister of Shakespeare. Her name is Judith Shakespeare. And she is just as talented as Shakespeare, but just because she is not given enough opportunities, because of being a woman, she is not given enough opportunities, and that is why she is not able to write the same amount of works or write with the same gist that Shakespeare has written. We all know about William Shakespeare, and he was a great dramatist. And Virginia Woolf is just saying that because Judith Shakespeare, who was William Shakespeare's sister, I am not saying that Shakespeare had a sister, he didn't have a sister. This is a character that Virginia Woolf has created in order to prove her point about feminism, that women are not given enough opportunities, the same amount of opportunities that a male is given. For example, William Shakespeare, and because of that, the greatness that William Shakespeare reached, Judith Shakespeare was not able to reach. Alright, so this is a very important point. This is a very important essay when it comes to Virginia Woolf and when it comes from UGC NET perspective, and because of that, I would suggest you go watch the feminism video and you would understand what I'm talking about. She had her own, Virginia Woolf had her own printing press. She had it with Leonard Woolf, and it was called Hogarth Press. You should remember that. And it was founded in 1917. Okay. Now, let's talk about the books. The first book that we are going to talk about is Voyages Out. Now, this book is about voyages, obviously. The original title of the book was the original book title was Malimbophia. Okay, this was the original title of Voyages Out. This is based on the life of Clarissa Dalloway. Now, Dalloway is a very big name when it comes to Virginia Woolf. You are going to see it again and again in different works of Virginia Woolf. She has used Dalloway as the main protagonist of a lot of her books. So, the first one that she wrote was Voyages Out. The original title of this book was Malimbophia, and this is based on the life of Clarissa Dalloway. Dalloway, आपको याद रखना है, Dalloway is a very big name. जब हम Virginia Woolf की बात करते हैं, Dalloway is a repeated character in a lot of works by Virginia Woolf. Now, the second is Jacob's Room. This is more of a criticism than a novel. This came out in 19 22. This is more of a criticism than a novel, and Shakespeare's sister is also the third essay in this book. So this is not about this is not based on a novel kind of thing. This is more of a criticism thing, and you should remember that. Jacob's Room. And go back to the criticism, go back to feminism. You have to watch the feminism video in order to understand the theory of feminism that Virginia Woolf has given. I have made already a video, so there's no point talking about it again and again, so go watch it. Today we are just going to talk about her novels and other works other than the theories that she has given. The next work is Mrs. Dalloway. Just how I told you right now a while ago that Dalloway is a very big character in Virginia Woolf. Mrs. Dalloway was her third book, and this came out. This was about this 51-year-old Mrs. Dalloway, who was married to Richard Dalloway. Now you have to remember that Mrs. Dalloway had a lot of affairs in the book that is written. So Mrs. Dalloway had an affair with Peter Walsh, who was in love with her. Then she fell in love with Sally Satin. You have to remember these characters because these have been asked before in UGC Net. You have to remember what were the characters that Mrs. Dalloway was romantically involved with. Obviously there was Peter Walsh, there was Sally Satin, and Richard Dalloway, who was the husband of Mrs. Dalloway. There was another character called Septimus Warren. He was a general in the war. As we all know, Virginia Woolf was writing around the time that World War II happened. So Septimus Warren was a general in the war, and because of that he was diagnosed with ADHD. ADHD, आप सबको पता है क्या होता है? ADHD is a kind of disorder that you get because of the stress of a certain event that has happened in your life. But because of that event that happened in your life, you're still stressful. The stress that comes after the trauma that you have faced, that kind of disorder, is ADHD. Septimus Warren was diagnosed with ADHD and he committed suicide. Alright, this is how Mrs. Dalloway is structured. Mrs. Dalloway is the wife. She's 51 years old. She is the wife of Richard Dalloway. She has had an affair with Peter Walsh and now is in love with Sally Satin. There is another character called Septimus Warren, who is a general in the war, and he is suffering from ADHD, and because of that he has committed suicide. Now let's talk about the next work, which is To the Lighthouse. To the Lighthouse. Now this book is a 3-part book. The first is called Window. The second is Time Passes, and the third is To the Lighthouse. Alright, so these are the 3 parts of the book To the Lighthouse. This is in the Window. The whole story comes around of Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay, and they have 3 children named Prue, Cam and James. There are 3 characters called Prue, Cam and James, and Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay are the father and mother of Prue, Cam and James. The book is structured in a way that it's divided into 3 parts: Window, Time Passes and To the Lighthouse. In Window, you just see how the family is structured. In Time Passes, Mrs. Warren dies, and in the Lighthouse, James, Prue and Cam and Mr. Ramsay goes to the lighthouse. This is how the book is structured. Now there is this thing that in the entire book they keep saying, James keeps asking Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey to take him to the lighthouse, but they keep repeating themselves. They keep saying that they would take him when the weather is better. And in the second part of the book, time passes, Mrs. Warren dies, because of which Mr. Ramsey felt really guilty because he was not able to take James with Mrs. Warren to the lighthouse, and because of which he takes James to the lighthouse in the last act. There is another character in the book called Lily Briscoe. She's a painter and she has a very famous line in the book called, I have had my vision. This question has been asked before in UGC NET, so you should remember that. I have had my vision. And that is how the book is structured. So just remember, To the Lighthouse was written by Virginia Woolf. It is divided into 3 parts. Window, time passes, and To the Lighthouse. Time, in the window you see the whole family, which is Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, who is the father and the mother, and there are 3 children called Prue, Cam and James. Now in time passes, Mrs. Warren dies, and then because Mr. Ramsey felt really guilty, he took the children to the lighthouse in the last part of the book. There is another character called Lily Briscoe, who's a painter, and she has this famous line in the book which is called, I have had my vision. Now the first line of the book is also important, which is, yes, of course, if it is fine tomorrow, but you will have to be up. Yes, of course, it's fine tomorrow, but you will have to be up. This is the first line of the book, To the Lighthouse. Now the next book that we are going to talk about is Orlando. Orlando came out in 1928 and the subtitle is a biography. Now this book is based on a woman who lives in a family that is based on the that lives with the family that Orlando is based on the life of a woman who gets married to a man whose family has roots in the Elizabethan time, and this woman lives for about 300 years and she meets different literary characters through the time. So she lives from Elizabethan time to 1928 Elizabethan to 1928, and she meets different literary characters that have come across in this time. So वो अलग अलग characters से, literary characters से, writers से, criticism के जो writers हैं उनसे, she meets these different characters from the Elizabethan time to 1928. This is the name of the book, called Orlando. This is about a woman who lives for about 300 years and the roots of the woman's husband's family is in Elizabethan time, and she meets different characters over the journey from Elizabethan to 1928. Now the next book is called The Waves. It came out in 1931. This is about soliloquy spoken by different characters. Soliloquies. The book is structured in the way that different characters give their soliloquies. This is The Waves. You have to remember, The Waves is a book written by Virginia Woolf. It came out in 1931, and the book is structured in the form of different soliloquies that were given by different characters. Now, the last book that we are going to talk about is Between the Acts. This came out in 1941, and as we all know that Virginia Woolf died in 1941 itself. So this is the last book of Virginia Woolf, and this is about a play staged between the World War II. Okay, this is a play that is staged between two different acts of the World War II. So this was the last book that we talked about of Virginia Woolf, which is called Between the Acts. It came out in 1941, and as we all know, Virginia Woolf died in 1941. This is a play that was staged between the acts of a play which was about World War II. So that was all about Virginia Woolf. We are going to continue the whole series of the modern writers. The next writer that we are going to talk about is D.H. Lawrence. We have already talked about I think George Orwell, Joseph Conrad, Virginia Woolf, and another writer that we have talked about is James Joyce. So we have already talked about 4 writers of modern age. We are going to continue talking about the modern age, and the next writer that we are going to talk about is D.H. Lawrence. So thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe to my channel, and we'll keep making videos and keep interacting on these videos of different writers. Thank you.